Welcome to a deep dive, everybody. We're diving into the mind of a Roman emperor. We're going to be cracking open the personal journals of Marcus Aurelius.
The philosopher king?
Yeah, so these writings were never meant for, public consumption. It's like we're stumbling upon his own personal notes.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what makes it so fascinating, because you're really getting a glimpse into someone who is grappling with immense power and responsibility, but also pondering the same fundamental questions that we still ask today.
Yeah, and it's not every day that you get to peek into the private musings of a Roman emperor. One passage that really struck me was Aurelius's observation about tragedies and comedies. Like in his time, he noticed how they mirror real life, but we react to them so differently.
It's such a fascinating point, and I think it's incredibly relevant even today.
Yeah. When
you think about how we might devour news stories that are filled with tragedy and drama, but then we'll laugh at a sitcom character's misfortunes. So I think he's really trying to get us to look at that disconnect, that tendency to get swept up in the spectacle of it all.
It's like he almost predicted our modern obsession with reality TV, the 24-hour news cycle. We're just bombarded with information constantly, plugged into the highs and lows of everyone else's lives. It makes you wonder what Aurelius would say about our consumption of drama today.
It really does, doesn't it?
Oh.
And he seemed particularly interested in the purpose of comedy, believing that it should, use humor to highlight flaws and encourage self-reflection. And he even cites Diogenes as an example, as this philosopher who is known for his biting satire, which kind of makes you wonder, does satire still serve that purpose today, or has it become just another form of entertainment, another way to feed our need for drama?
Yeah, that's something to think about. And speaking of, reflecting on our own reactions, there's another passage where Aurelius uses this incredibly vivid metaphor. He talks about a branch being cut from a tree to illustrate this core Stoic belief in interconnectedness.
And the image is so powerful too, because it's not just saying it. It's you can feel the separation, right? Like a branch, when it's cut off, it loses its life source, right? It withers. And so he's tying that to our human experience, reminding us that we are all part of this larger whole.
It's like he's saying that, even though we might perceive ourselves as separate individuals, our actions, our choices have ripple effects that extend far beyond our immediate sphere. He doesn't delve into cosmopolitanism directly, but you can see the seeds of that idea here. The sense of shared humanity that transcends, geographical boundaries.
Exactly. And what's interesting is he doesn't just dwell on that potential for disconnection. He ends on kind of a hopeful note, suggesting that even a separated branch can be, grafted back on.
Oh, okay.
Can find its way back to the whole. It takes effort, though.
It takes work. Speaking of work, he also talks about another kind of work that that we should be engaged in the work of being good. And he even uses the word profession, which I thought was interesting.
Right.
It's not just a hobby.
Right. It's not a side hustle.
Right.
This is your main gig. This is the thing.
This is the calling. So being good is our main calling.
Yeah. And it's tied to that Stoic principle of living in accordance with nature.
Okay, so pop quiz, what does that mean? Living in accordance with nature.
That's a great question, because it's one that's often misunderstood. So when the Stoics are talking about nature, they're really referring to the rational order of the universe, right?
Okay.
So to live in accordance with nature means to kind of align ourselves with that order, to strive to understand it, to embrace our place within it.
So it's not just about hugging trees and composting.
Right. I mean, those things have their place, but it's bigger than that. Right. Yeah. It's about cultivating our capacity for reason, for virtue, for ethical action.
Which brings us back to Aurelius's, quote unquote profession of goodness.
Yeah.
It's a commitment.
Absolutely.
To constant striving to be better.
And you see this reflected in one passage where he even asks himself, he's like, have I done anything charitably today?
Wow.
Which is such a simple question, but it's so profound because he's holding himself accountable.
It reminds me of that quote, I think it's attributed to Socrates, "The unexamined life is not worth living."
Oh, I love that.
He really took that to heart. It makes you think, what would it look like if we all, kind of took on that level of self-reflection, that dedication to ethical development?
I think it would radically change things.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
It's almost like we've we've lost sight of that, like that ancient wisdom that really urged us to look inward, to examine our motives, our actions.
And yet here we are, right? Like centuries later.
Still reading him.
Drawn to these words. Why do you think that is?
Why are we still reading Marcus Aurelius?
Yeah.
Well, because his reflections are so deeply human, right? He wasn't just like this untouchable figure preaching from, on high. He was like right there, in the trenches with us, like grappling with self-doubt, insecurity, anger, all the messy realities of being alive.
He never claimed to have all the answers. And I think that's maybe like the most enduring quality of his writing, is that it's not like, here's the, 10 steps to enlightenment, right? It's like, I'm figuring this out too, right alongside you.
Yeah, he's modeling a way of being, a process.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that we can all kind of, learn from and be inspired by.
Absolutely.
And he even admits to like struggling with anger at times.
Oh, yeah.
Which I find very relatable.
Very, very human.
It's like, okay, even emperors, even philosophers, they get frustrated, they make mistakes. They're human, just like us.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to forget that, right? Like we put these historical figures up on pedestals.
For sure.
And we forget that they had their own struggles, their own setbacks, their own, demons, so to speak, that they were battling.
But it's that willingness to be vulnerable, to acknowledge, the imperfections, I think that makes him, all the more relatable and his wisdom all the more accessible.
Totally agree. And it all goes back to that idea, right, of Stoicism as this like ongoing practice, this journey, not a destination.
It's not about, like achieving this perfect state of, like perfect virtue, but just like striving to be a little bit better today than we were yesterday.
Keep coming back to the intention. Keep reflecting. Keep learning.
Exactly. And on that note, I think it's time to kind of wrap up our deep dive into the meditations of Marcus Aurelius. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. If Aurelius were keeping his journal today, what would his own, deep dive reveal about him? Like what would he be grappling with? What insights would he be like uncovering about himself and the world around him? And maybe even more importantly, what would your deep dive reveal? It's something to think about. Thanks for joining us today.
Wake up, get up, power in your stride. Own your thoughts, let them be your guide. Stars in the night, they shine just like you. Changes the game, a brand new view. So it's hard, won't be torn apart. Resilient mind, powerful start. Opinions fly, but the truth lies within. Break through the noise, let your journey begin. Anger's a fire, burns you down low. Kindness wins the fight. Watch your spirit grow. Deep in the moment, find your inner light. Embrace the challenge, dancing to the night. So it hard, won't be torn apart. Resilient mind, powerful start. Opinions fly, but the truth lies within. Break through the noise, let your journey begin. So it hard, won't be torn apart. Resilient mind, powerful start. Opinions fly, but the truth lies within. Break through the noise, let your journey begin. Live each day like it's your
learned a long time ago the best way to get back on your feet is to miss 3 car payments. You got to step up your game plan. You got to look at this for what it is. Something's happening up in here, and it's different. And there's no time to sit around and say, well, why does this have to happen to me? Why not you? Who would you suggest? You got to be like Zach Benson. Deal with it. Got to deal with it. I'll never forget when I was unloading the truck, going back to the house I moved my mother out of. My mother told me, hold your head up, boy. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Hold your head up. You have nothing to be ashamed of. And when you lift up your head, let me tell you something. Oh, anybody can have faith when you got a job, your marriage is working, you got money in the bank, your children acting like they have good sense. Nobody looked at you and told you that you are terminally ill. Oh, you can have faith then. But faith not tested can't be trusted. Listen to me. Listen to me. You don't know how strong you are until you have to be strong. And most people, they choose. It's always a choice. It's always a choice. Zach Benson, check him out. In the interview I did with him on my Facebook after my conversation with you, Jack Benson could have become depressed and turned to drugs and all type of self-sabotaging behavior, as many people do every day.
You can either live your dreams or live your fears. And I think the majority of people actually are not living their dreams, but are living their fears. What are your fears? What are you afraid of? What are you scared of? Because we all have fears, don't we? We all have something that's blocking us, that's holding us back. The reason that most people are not...
It is in the treatment of trifles that a person shows what they are. One of the most dangerous things you can do is compare your life to somebody else's. It's not a race. It's your journey.
Man is the measure of all things, Protagoras.
Never say maybe. If you want to say no, say no. Do not correct people if you could just as easily let it slide.
Never forget your roots, but understand that you have to leave them to grow. David Goggins.
Introduction. Everyone can benefit from the true meaning and philosophical teachings of Stoicism. Having the ability to choose how you react and respond can alleviate anxious and depressive symptoms. The Stoic way of thinking allows you to thoughtfully process and accept situations while giving you the power to choose how you react, handle, and cope. Stoicism allows you to control what you can and let go of what you cannot. It helps you to choose your attitude, to live in the moment, and make sense of your circumstances. Living a more stoic life will give you the opportunity to live a mentally healthier, more balanced, and overall happier life. The carefully curated quotations compiled here are wonderful tenets to live by and help illustrate specific lessons to improve yourself. We, the authors, have embarked on this exploration of Stoic philosophy in our writings and in our daily professions, where we assist individuals on their journeys of personal growth and recovery. We understand that this odyssey of continued self-education and improvement begins with you. All of us understand that Stoicism is one of the many tools you can use to help quell the suffering, to have a better understanding of yourself, and improve your approach to living.
This is gonna seem weird, but I promise y'all I know what I'm doing. It's gonna seem weird, but I know what I'm doing, okay? I'm old, I know what I'm doing, all right? So put your age in there. Now what I want you to put down is how old you wanna be when you leave this earth. Now here's the, I don't care what religion, what politics. One thing we all know, we ain't gonna be here forever. There's one thing I can guarantee y'all: you won't be living like you won't be here 150 years from now. I can guarantee you that. You won't be 150. You won't be here. So the real question is, how old are you, and then how long you want to be on this earth, right? Because here's why this is why this is important. Because if you know you're not gonna be here forever, then you're gonna treat how long you're gonna be here differently. So what happens sometimes when you're young, you think you're gonna be young forever. I feel you, I used to be there. I woke up this morning, I was 51 years old. I was like, man, I'm 51. My grandma, I went to go see my grandma, she's 91. I was like, man, I remember my grandma was in her 40s. My grandma 91. Now listen to me very closely. I'm not the don't say no to drugs dude, right? You make whatever decisions you want. You do whatever you want to do. I'm here to tell you though, that you're not gonna live forever. And so you have to decide then, if you're not gonna be here forever, what are your 20s gonna look like? What are your 30s gonna look like? What are your 40s gonna look like? Now I'm from Chicago originally, grew up in Detroit. 90% of my boys are not living the way I'm living. They ain't no different than me. As a matter of fact, Bob should doggone be speaking to y'all right now, not me. Bob was the one that got me off the streets of Detroit. I was homeless. Like for real, for real. I love rappers because rappers be in the studio doing that stuff.
Being private, staying low-key, and not telling everyone everything is self-care. Nothing is actually as bad as it seems, or as great as you think it will be. God is the father of all men. Epictetus. Be slow in choosing a friend, slower in changing. Overtrusting, betrayal, masturbation, loss of energy, stress, hair loss, overthinking, depression, saying no to important things, revenge, ruining your own life, observing, increase in wisdom, forgiving, healing, letting go, peace of mind.
Your purpose in life is to find your purpose and give your whole heart and soul to it. Deepak Chopra.
Remember that on the one hand, desires command you to obtain what you long for, and on the other, aversions command you to avoid what you dislike. Those who fail to gain what they desire are unfortunate, whilst those who fall into what they seek to avoid are miserable. So if you seek to avoid only those things contrary to nature, amongst the things that are in your power, you will accordingly fall into nothing to which you are averse. But if you seek to avoid sickness or death or poverty, you will be miserable. 2. Therefore, remove altogether your aversion for anything that is not in our power, and transfer it to those things contrary to nature that are in our power. For the time being, completely restrain your desires, for if you desire any of those things not in our power, you are bound to suffer misfortune. For of those things in our power, which it would be proper to desire, none is yet within your grasp. Use only choice and refusal, but use even these lightly, with reservation, and without straining.
You got a sheet of paper, right? Put the paper up on the wall. I want you to write it. Why? Because when you write it down and your eyes see it, you can do it. Listen to me. I believe this with all my heart. I literally flew from Detroit to Kansas today. I flew, guys. Watch this. 200 years ago, people said only birds could what? Come on, I'm just being real. 200 years ago, they said only birds could fly. No, a human wasn't meant to fly. Now, not only are we flying, we watching TV. We watching TV in first class. They making meals, right? In some planes you could lay down. I went to Dubai a few months ago, and the seat that I sat in, it was like a living room, a big old 30-something inch TV. They're bringing people steak and duck and all wine and all kind of sweets and snacks, everything. You could use your cell phone. Imagine that.